Okay, to be fair to this comic, it is based on a screenplay by Alan Dean Foster that was meant to be the original second Star Wars film. The story and set pieces were designed to be low cost, so that if the original Star Wars movie wasn't a success, George Lucas could still make a low budget sequel. But this comic is just trash. It's not even that it's based on a low budget screenplay, it's that the characters are fucking trash. Luke Skywalker is nothing like the Luke in A New Hope. At one point he slaps Leia, and again, to be fair, it was so they could remain undetected on an Imperial controlled world. But there are other things, like when he viciously slaughters a group of primate indigenous aliens. He's chopping their arms off, he cuts them in half, he doesn't even try diplomacy, and he's standing right next to Princess Leia. She's no better either. At one point she throws an axe into the backs of one of the aliens. When Ben cut Ponda Baba's arm off in the cantina scene, Luke's reaction was shock. In Splinter of the Mind's Eye, he seems to think that this is the way to approach conflicts, even though Ben made it clear to him there are alternatives to fighting. The characters are just not the same as they were in A New Hope, and it's not a progressive change either. It's like Foster didn't have a clue what these characters were actually about. Then there's Jedi Master Hala. I cannot work out this bitch's accent. She says things like stang and is one of the most selfish characters I've ever encountered in the Star Wars universe. When Luke and Leia are captured, she's quite happy leaving them to die, not to mention the fact that she's looking for a kyber crystal that will enhance her force abilities, so she would be unbeatable. These are not the actions of a Jedi Master, and it's not very believable. The ending is a fucking joke. Seriously, it's a joke. Darth Vader accidentally chops his own arm off, regains his balance after a moment, then trips over his own arm into a bottomless fucking pit. It's fucking pathetic. Although at least Vader is as evil here as he was in A New Hope, it's still a pathetic ending to a pathetic book. You can see in the end elements of this screenplay made it into Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi though. During the final fight with Vader, Vader uses the Force to throw rocks at Luke, much like he threw the machines at him in Empire Strikes Back, and Vader uses Force Lightning on Luke, like the Emperor did in Return of the Jedi. Considering Luke had next to no control of the Force by the end of A New Hope, and we don't see him attempting to get any better at it here, it's still odd to see him doing things like reflecting Vader's Force Lightning back at him and throwing his lightsaber at enemies. Again, it just doesn't fit with the character. As for the art, I thought the penciling was good, but that's about it. The cover art, on first glance, is really good, but if you look at it long enough, you realise Vader's mask is drawn completely wrong. He's looking from the top left to the bottom right, so his entire mouthpiece should be to the right more than it's been drawn, and this causes severe mismatching between his left and right cheeks, makes him look like his mouth curves to under his left eye. I know his mask wasn't symmetrical in any of the original movies, and I know that in Revenge of the Sith they deliberately made it asymmetrical to reference that, but in none of these movies was his mask distorted this badly. It's like the cover artist just couldn't work out how to draw it properly and gave up. This is actually a modern age comic, but it's from the mid-90s, so it's fairly early in the modern age. Digital manipulation of art in comic books didn't really start until the turn of the century, so I can forgive the limited amount of colours on each page, but I just can't forgive a comic from the 90s still using techniques from the 60s when they don't have to. The sort of thing I'm talking about is having nothing in the background and just using plain colour instead. It all adds up to a bland comic that feels like it's from the 60s or 70s. It feels like a Bronze Age comic, and there's no reason for that. Maybe that's what they were going for, I don't know, but I certainly didn't find it very immersive. This is set between episodes 4 and 5, and while it doesn't exactly challenge the events of the old timeline, it doesn't exactly fit in either. Kyber crystals are different, they're spelt differently, and they do different things. Luke seems to be much better with the Force than he is at the beginning of Empire Strikes Back. Jedi Masters don't seem to be what they were in any film or book, and Leia was severely scarred by Vader on a midriff. There's nothing really that specifically doesn't fit, but nothing that really does. It's a comic that's neither here nor there and suffers from being based on a low-budget script. The characters don't match up with what we saw in A New Hope, and the execution is quite poor. Overall, I'd say you can safely skip this one, even if you are a die-hard Star Wars fan.